Hey guys, my name is Adam, and I'm here with episode number 6 of the News Hub for the 25th of May, 2013. The first story I have to talk about today has to do with Microsoft's reveal of the Xbox One, which happened only a couple days ago. So I have a lot to talk about with this, but I will try to keep this pretty concise and to the point. I was very disappointed with the Xbox One reveal. I'm very disappointed with the naming. I'm very disappointed with how much they left unclear. We still have no full confirmation on DRM. We have no full confirmation on how the system is even going to be coming to our living rooms. We have no idea. And it's very sad to me that we have no idea because they could have cleared up so much concern and so much speculation, but they're choosing to let it stay. And the speculation I'm talking about is not good speculation. It's not stuff that makes your console take off on the charts. Right now, Sony is destroying Microsoft in terms of advertising. Because people are honestly getting more feedback. People understand Sony more because Microsoft has not given them full answers. They kept the reveal very basic, and the main things they talked about were how the Xbox could show television, and they could run EA Sports on there, and so on and so forth. But that's not good enough for me. I want to see the base gaming rig. I want to know what this thing is capable of, and I want to know how responsive it will be, and for how many years. Because this next system is probably going to be lasting as long as the current generation, and that's just not good enough. It's not. I hope that we get to see something a bit different from Microsoft, at least by E3, but I don't know if we will. Now, the story that I want to talk about in specific has to do with indie devs actually coming out against Microsoft, saying that they need to be more like Sony when it comes to supporting them. They need to feel supported in order to actually put games on the system. And I think it's definitely a very, very important point. Sony, at their unveiling of the PlayStation 4, ended up showing a lot of support for indie development. They said they would help them in whatever ways they could, and the Xbox One mentioned absolutely nothing about indie development, and they mainly focused on other areas of gaming. What it looks like to me so far from this generation and everything we've seen is that Microsoft's Xbox One will focus on the AAA titles, and Sony is going to start focusing more on indie titles. We're going to see a lot of new stuff from Sony, and we're going to see sequels of pre-existing titles on the Xbox One. Now, that's not entirely a bad thing, but the trend that we're seeing right now is that a lot of AAA games are not meeting their quota, and not only that, we're seeing indie games rising to fame. We've had a lot of super big hits. We saw Bastion a couple years ago or 1 year ago. I think it was a couple, but I'm not positive. I mean, we've seen a bunch of good games. We've seen indie games coming out like crazy, and I'm very happy that indie devs are starting to stand up for themselves and talk to the monstrous Microsoft about how they're not getting support and they're not being helped. And can you blame them? I don't think so. I think that this is a step that needs to be taken, and we've seen a lot of indie devs come out. For example, Paul Taylor of the maker of Frozen Synapse ended up coming out against Microsoft, saying, in terms of what it means for us as an indie, I think Microsoft's approach to developers is much more important than the console itself. We'd love to see a more proactive attitude to indies, reducing the red tape and difficulty involved with getting a title onto Xbox Live. That is another very important point. Right now, we're seeing indie devs having a lot of trouble without a publisher to get onto the systems because it costs so much money. I think that the fee for an indie dev game that is only going to cost $10 is way too high, considering it's, how much can an indie game on the Xbox 360 sell to actually warrant people paying the money to put it on there? I don't think it's worth it for indie devs right now, and I think that the Xbox and Microsoft in general needs to do a lot better job of promoting those kind of games. But it looks like Sony's doing that instead, which is interesting because in the last generation, we saw it the exact opposite. The Xbox 360 had the Xbox Live Arcade, and Sony had really nothing to deal with indie devs. We're sort of seeing a switch in the way that development is going on, and I think that's good. I think Sony learned a lot from Microsoft through the use of arcade, and I think Microsoft instead wants to move away from that and into television, sports games, and AAA titles exclusively. And I don't know if that's the best idea. It certainly is a realistic one, and I think they definitely could pull it off, but as I said, we don't know enough about the system yet, and it's shocking because it's already been revealed, and we still don't know too much, but hopefully by E3 we'll have a lot more info, and at E3 they'll be talking about all the games that will be there for release on the system. I think we'll be seeing stuff like Watch Dogs and various other AAAs that Microsoft will be interested to put on the service. But let's move on to the next topic. A Battlefield 4 producer has gone on record and said that single-player campaigns in the Battlefield series should feel separate and independent of the multiplayer aspect of the game. Now, this is something that certainly a lot of people, I think, can agree with. You want a good single-player campaign. When you're paying $60 for a game, you expect there to be good quality content, and you want both a good single-player and a good multiplayer. You can't really deny that you want it all, but unfortunately, it's very difficult to get all of that. Now, what I have to say to this, quite frankly, and I'm sure that the Battlefield 4 producer knows what he's talking about, but even still, I feel I have to say that it's probably not going to be the best campaign ever. I've always found that FPS games or heavily multiplayer-centric games always have a really bad campaign, and I can't really blame them because companies face deadlines. It's nothing that they can avoid. When you're working for a publisher, they expect a game out on a certain date, and it's going to be even more of a deadline considering that the new consoles are coming out. Right now, Battlefield 4 is supposed to launch on October 29th. That is the plan. And they need to make sure they're right on the point with this one because the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One are going to be selling quite a lot on the opening day. And Battlefield needs to make sure that they can have this pretty much on the first day or a couple days after, whatever they want to do, but they need to absolutely make sure they have it before Christmas so people can get all of their games by then. I think it's very important to hit a console when it is first released, otherwise you're going to be losing a huge chunk of your sales because they'll just move on to different games and forget about Battlefield. That's what Call of Duty's doing, it's what all the games are doing. You're going to see a lot of AAAs coming out right at the time of the new consoles coming out, and I don't think I really need to explain why. It purely is because the console will get them a ton more sales. That's it. But looking at the single-player campaign, I'm not sure if they can make a very unique and separate campaign for Battlefield while still focusing on the multiplayer aspect of the game. If they can manage it and they're not under a lot of stress and they can work through this by the specified deadline, then why wouldn't you want this to happen? Yeah, you want a lot of focus on everything they can, and I think that that's good. They want to add more drama and more intensity. And on top of that, they are looking to lock players in situations where things go boom. And this is a statement directly from the producer at Battlefield. So I think they can do it. The question is, do they have the time to do it? I know they can do it, actually, but I worry that they won't have the time. Battlefield 4 is a huge seller for DICE, and they need to make sure that the game will be finished in time, especially with these new consoles. I've said it a million times already, but it needs to happen. And this may not be the best time to run the risk of having a shoddy multiplayer campaign and a good single player, if that makes any sense. But I don't know. I hope that EA and DICE does well together and they can work together on this nicely and solve the problem of keeping a very independent single player campaign while having a very rich multiplayer. But let's move on to the next topic. This story probably bothers me most of all in the past couple of years, considering Microsoft is certainly a powerhouse, and their statement they just make me shake my head, and it's ridiculous. But nonetheless, here's the basis of it. Microsoft still won't focus on the traditional desktop PC game. They refuse to give us very, very large and high-quality AAA titles, and instead they're going to be focusing still on the console side of things with the Xbox One coming out. And I understand that, and I can accept that, but there's so much wrong with Microsoft's approach to gaming as of late. They just keep digging themselves in a bigger and bigger hole, and people just despise them by this point. They're becoming a horrible company to work with. In terms of being a gamer, I don't like dealing with Microsoft because they say the most stupid things. So, here's the basis. Microsoft came out and said that the Xbox One would have at least 15 exclusives that won't be arriving on PC, or any other platform for that matter. So Xbox One, once again, we're going to see exclusives, and we didn't see that many in the past generation, but we're certainly seeing them now. It just bothers me. It really does. As a PC gamer, it disappoints me greatly. Now, the hilarious thing is that Microsoft is very out of tune with the world, And in their statement, they said, "We have got everything from very, very casual games like our very much improved and reimagined Solitaire, all the way to graphically complicated games like The Harvest." Yeah, so here's the thing. They are targeting Windows 8 gamers with an improved version of Solitaire and a complicated game known as The Harvest, which is actually not graphically intense at all. You want to talk graphically intense, you can go play Crysis, but it's beside the point. Microsoft is out of touch with the world of gaming, and I think this just perfectly shows it. It just boggles my mind. How can they consider Solitaire a traditional desktop PC game? First of all, it didn't even start on the PC. It started with damn card game. It doesn't make any sense for them to say stuff like this, but they do it. They do it all the time. And here we are, once again, complaining about Microsoft. Not entirely for the Xbox One, more so just their incompetence when it comes to PC gaming. As of late, I've been very disappointed in what they've been doing. I really hope that they'll get out of this trend of ignoring PC, but it doesn't look like they will. I just hope that things change soon, but until then, I guess we'll move on to the last topic of the day. I finally have something nice to say about Microsoft. It's a shocker, it really is, but don't get me wrong, this is actually nothing groundbreaking, and it's nothing that's going to change my opinion, really, on Microsoft and their business plan as of late, but here we go. Microsoft has had their Xbox One increase the friends list limit to 1,000. Not the Xbox 360, no, that is still stuck at 100, but if you purchase your brand new Xbox One, you'll have a friends list size of 1,000 people. Personally, I find absolutely no need for this. Why would you add 1,000 people on your friends list? That just seems chaotic, and you'll get messages popping up on your screen about 1,000,000 times a second. It boggles my mind. I don't see the reason to have 1,000 people added, because you're never going to be able to keep track of that many people. I do not remember like 100 people. How can you remember 1,000? It's weird to me. Nonetheless, this is something that should have been added a long time ago. There's no reason why it can't be higher than 100, and now it is. So there you go. I hope this makes at least some people happy. To me, I don't care, but hey, if you want that extra friends list size and you are looking at everything else that Microsoft has done with the console so far, and you still want that, go ahead. I'm not going to stop you, but I have no intention of picking up an Xbox One. If you do, go ahead. I'm not going to stop you. It's fine. But I'm probably not going to pick up either console, but at this point it looks like Sony is offering the better product, at least in my opinion. But keep in mind that every single gamer has different needs, and certainly we have a lot of people that can do with 1,000 people friends lists. Mostly entertainers though, and normal gamers, they're not going to be able to fill that friends list, ever. Which I guess is good, you know. You never want it to be filled, so I guess that's kind of the point. Nonetheless, that does it for this episode of the News Hub. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did enjoy, click that like button down below, and if you're new, please subscribe. I put these out every week on Saturday, but until then, hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in future videos.